Yeah, am I visible and audible? Okay. Hello everyone. Myself Hetal Pathak on the very first day of presentation season semester 3 in paper number 201 Indian English Literature Pre-Independence, and my topic is Bimla's journey of self-discovery in Rabindranath Tagore's novel The Home and the World. These are my personal details. These are some of the points which I am going to discuss in my presentation. Beginning with the introduction of Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore was an Indian poet, writer, playwright, composer, philosopher, social reformer, and painter. In Krishna Kriplani's work, Rabindranath Tagore, a biography, he has written that if Tagore had been nothing more than a poet and writer, the quality and output of his contributions to his people's language and literature would still entitle him to be remembered as one of the truly great immortals. He was an artist in life. His personal life was as harmonious and noble as his works is simple and beautiful. He lived as he wrote, not for pleasure or profit, but out of joy. Not as a brilliant egoist, but as a dedicated spirit, conscious that his genius was a gift from the divine to be used in the service of man. The Nobel Prize in Literature 1930 was awarded to Rabindranath Tagore because of his profoundly sensitive, fresh, and beautiful works by which, with consummate skill, he has made his poetic thought expressed in his own English words, a part of the literature of the West. Rabindranath Tagore was largely self taught and also known as the Bard of Bengal. About the home and the world. The home and the world was originally published in Bengali language with the title Ghare Bahire in the year 1960, and later it was translated and published in English language by the author's nephew Surendranath Tagore in the year 1990. Talking about the political background of the novel, The Home and the World, it's set against the backdrop of the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, following its sudden and arbitrary partition by the British Viceroy Lord Curzon in 1905. The novel illustrates the battle that Tagore had with himself between the two different ideas and ideologies of Western culture and the revolution against Western culture. And these two different ideas are portrayed in the novel with the characters of Nikhilesh and Sandeep. Though the entire novel is told with the perspective of three main characters, which are Nikhilesh, Bimla, and Sandeep. Nikhilesh or Nikhil, husband of Bimla, and he described as an educated and gentle man, rational and who opposes violence. Bimla, a traditional female and wife of Nikhilesh, and Sandeep, third major character who is having revolutionary ideas about nationalism and Swadeshi movement. Talking about Bimla's journey of self-discovery, dilemma, and transformation. First, let's begin with her early life and her marriage to Nikhil. The story starts when she marries to Nikhilesh, a noble and progressive man from a bourgeois Bengali household. Bimla submits herself completely to the home and her husband, yielding to her conditioning because this is the only way she believes in which a woman can love her husband, while Nikhil reserves her a seat beside him. Bimla suggests in the story that she would be happier with a place at his feet. It means her husband Nikhilesh feet. It was my woman's heart which must worship in order to love. Bimla, the main protagonist of the novel, is presented as a native Indian woman who gets Western and modern education and lives modern lifestyle due to her marriage. Bimla stands at the center of the tale. From the very beginning of the novel, Nikhil tries to shape Bimla as his new woman. He wants her to arrive in the outside world to know more herself. His earnest desire to see Bimla as a free woman who will choose to love him, not because custom dictates it, but of her own record. speaks of his denial to the acceptance of the traditional male orthodoxy reigning in the society. The title of the novel reveals a major theme. It is the relationship of the home with the outside world. Nikhil is Western, oriented, modern, and he wants his wife Bimla to be modified by Western education. Bimla follows Hindu rituals and so she does not go outside her house. Her world is the blend of conflict of Western ideas and education as well as traditional Indian life. But she imitates her husband Nikhil and so she tries to grip and grapple between the ideas and things that Nikhilesh provides her after their marriage. Bimala is caught between the two men. Initially, she is seduced by Sandeep's cause, although in her mind the exact nature of the cause is never clear. It remains an ambiguous fanaticism for truth. Bimla does not fully understand the consequences of her actions, however, until they bear that destructive fruit. Nikhil and Sandeep have opposing views on foreign influence, and Bimla finds herself in a struggle between the influences of the two men. So the novel opens when Bimla marries Nikhilesh, and Nikhilesh is a man, aristocrat. He belongs to the aristocratic Bengali household, and his viewpoints and his thinking is very rational, and he also opposes violence, and he thinks that everyone have their own choices and freedoms, and that is why he wants Bimla to love her, but not because of the custom dictates it, but because of her own record. So that is why Nikhilesh wants to give freedom to Bimla, and he wants to know that Bimla should go outside the home and wants to know more about herself. Her role as a wife. Bimla continues to have a strong sense of wifehood and unrelenting devotion to her husband. She internalizes the duties of an ideal wife, and it her conditioning that has led to her to think so. She thinks that it is through touching her husband's feet and taking the dust from it would make her love her husband. Her real joy was that at her husband's feet, she feels a sense of inferiority because of her poorer background and her darker complexion. The role of wife is particularly a constructing one. Satyajit Ray's film Ghare Bahire, to a large extent, is a faithful adaptation of Rabindranath Tagore's novel uh, to the same name. Ray, in his film, explores that how Bimla, his heroine, struggles to redefine herself as wife and mistress in a determined effort to free herself from the traditional definitions of these two roles as imposed and insisted upon by her husband Nikhil and lover Sandeep. So Nikhil wants Bimla to give freedom, and he wants that Bimla should also have their own freedom and her own choices. On the other hand, Sandeep's view is completely different, and Sandeep makes Bimla believe that the entire nation is in the need of Bimla, and that is why Bimla does not know that what she have to do, whether she wants to follow the traditional rules or traditional wife duties, or whether she wants to involve herself in a Swadeshi movement. The film very sensitively portrays a wife's confused passion, a husband's misguided nobility, and a lover's shrewd exploitation to achieve his selfish ends. Both husband and wife suffer, as we know that till in the last of the novel, Nikhilesh and Sandeep both suffers, and the lover conveniently exists. It is the wife who ultimately gets victimized by the powerful Hindu forces of the period's male hegemony. Satyajit Ray makes Bimla the inevitable victim of her period's history, which finally forces her to occupy a position which is neither at home nor in the world of her time. Influence of Swadeshi movement. So how the influence of Swadeshi movement impacts upon the character of Bimla. Swadeshi movement disseminated in Bengal between 905 and 908. The immediate cause for Swadeshi in Bengal was the partition of Bengal in 904. The novel is also set in the time when Swadeshi movement encompassed Bengal. As we know the political background of the novel, Nikhil's friend Sandeep is a handsome revolutionary Swadeshi enthusiast who is devoted to the cause of country. Bimala stands for the new concept of nation and women because Swadeshi also involved the woman question in its fight. Bimla, while first listening to the speech of Sandeep, is totally bewitched and identifies herself as the woman of Bengal who must fight for the country. So when Sandeep makes entry in the novel, his ideas and his views about nationalism completely differs from the ideas of Nikhilesh, and in one way or the other, he makes Bimla convinced that the entire nation is in the need of her, and that is why she have to involve herself in the nationalist movement with him. I was utterly unconscious of myself. I was no longer the lady of Raja's house, but the sole representative of Bengal's womanhood, and he was the champion of Bengal. So, this is the quote, this is the dialogue in the novel by Bimla. When the influence of Swadeshi movement impacts upon her character, she was utterly unconscious of herself, and she doesn't know that what was she doing, and what will be the consequences of that. Bimla's fascination with Sandeep disturbs her equation with Nikhil. She mistakes the ideals of Nikhil as his weakness for not supporting Swadeshi movement. So, when Sandeep makes an entry, and when the two characters, Sandeep and Bimla, are interrogating with each other about the Swadeshi movement, it obviously disturbs the equation of Bimla with her husband Nikhil, and that is why even Bimla mistakes the ideals of Nikhil as his weakness for not supporting Swadeshi movement. So Bimla somewhere thinks that even Nikhilesh don't want to support her in the Swadeshi movement, but somewhere we know that Nikhilesh doesn't want to stop Bimla because he thinks that he wants to give freedom to her. As Bimla becomes an active participant of Swadeshi, she becomes estranged to Nikhil. Sandeep makes Bimla believe that the whole country is in need of her, and that is how Bimla begins to be involved with Sandeep in saving the country. Bimla's infatuation with Sandeep stands in the novel for Bengal's infatuation with Swadeshi. So the way that Bengali citizens they are infatuated with Swadeshi, in the same way Bimla's infatuation we can see with Sandeep in the context of Swadeshi movement. Bimla is confused about her love for Swadeshi and also for her love for Sandeep. Swayed by Sandeep, she feels, I was Shakti, also an embodiment of universal joy. And this hero, this true servant of the country, this devotee of mine, this flaming intelligence, this burning energy, the shining genius, him also was I creating from moment to moment. Have I not seen how my presence pours fresh life into him time after time? Bimla's journey from home to the world and back to home is a cautionary tale against the dangers of Swadeshi movement, which was degenerating into a violent movement. So that is how throughout the novel we can find that first we can see Bimla as a traditional wife, and she completes her traditional duties, and her primary responsibility revolves around the comfort of her husband Nikhilesh. But as the novel progresses, and when Sandeep makes an entry, we can find that her even Sandeep tries to uh, tries to impact on her inner turmoil. And that is how we can find that first Bimla we can see as a traditional wife, and slowly about her self discovery and her transformation, she completely changed. Analysis of her character development, Bimla struggles for identity. The identity of the overcoming of the conflict of old ideas makes her think that the modern ideas can bring true freedom of mind. She is a part of the country, but she comes across her home, which is the blend of culture. She is torn between two ideas. She cannot decide whether she should support her country or support her husband like a traditional Indian woman. She is forced to understand how her traditional Indian life can associate with a modern world. Throughout the novel, she continued to struggle between tradition and modernity. Bimla's character development in the home and the world is a complex journey of self discovery, transformation, and ultimately a realization in the end of the novel. So, the character of Bimla becomes a mixture and a blend of Western ideas, as well as her role as a traditional Indian woman. And first we see her character as a traditional Indian woman, then her desire for involvement in Swadeshi movement, and at the end, when she came to know that Sandeep is doing all these things of nationalism for his own motive and own selfish person. So, in the end, ultimately, he realized that her true home is in her true world is in her home. So, that is how we can compare her journey of self discovery and transformation. Conclusion. There are three distinctive views on nationalism presented in this novel through the key characters Nikhil, Bimla, and Sandeep. Nikhil represents the ideology of Rabindranath Tagore, as we have seen that Nikhil opposes violence. So, Nikhil can be seen as the spokesperson of Rabindranath Tagore about Swadeshi movement. On the other hand, Sandeep represents extreme nationalistic view, and he can do anything for reaching his goals. Between these two distinctive views, Bimla represents the dilemmatic view on nationalism. Tagore also depicts India in the form of a woman, Bimla. Bimla is portrayed as the physiological and psychological resemblance of the nation. Thus, to conclude, Tagore's The Home and the World, retiring the old process of assimilation and homogenization, resolved Bimla's estrangement by relocating her world in her home. These are my references that I have taken for the presentations, and now I am open for questions.
My question is that what impact do the interactions and relationships with other characters, such as Nikhil and Sandeep, have on Vimla's journey of self-discovery?
Okay. So the interactions between the two characters Nikhil and Sandeep, as we know that the Sandeep and Nikhil both are the friends of each other, but they both are having completely different views upon nationalism, and they both interact with each other. But in a way, when Sandeep makes an entry in the novel, everything becomes a change. He Sandeep tries to interact more and more with Bimla, and that is how he wants to involve her in involve. He wants involvement of Bimla in Swadeshi movement, and as a husband, Nikhil can stop Bimla for doing all these things. But as we know, the characteristics of Nikhilesh in the very initial part of the novel, that he don't want to stop Bimla for whatever she is doing. But when Bimla came to know about Sandeep's tricks and his selfish motive, she ultimately realized that what was she was doing, that the nationalism that was wrong. So that is how the interactions and relationships of the characters Nikhil and Sandeep, it have a large impact on Bimla's journey of self discovery and transformation.
my question is, how does Bimla, nurtured by tradition and introduced to modernity by Nikhil, find herself in the midst of the nationalist movement?
Okay, so when the novel opens, we can see that first Bimla wants to be like her mother. That she when the marriage proposal of her came, the one astrologer says that she would become an ideal wife, and that is how at the time of marriage she was seen as a very traditional Indian wife, and her only primary responsibility revolves around Nikhilesh, and she don't want to step outside of the world. But as when after their marriage, and when Nikhilesh wants to Bimla to go outside the world and wants to know more about herself, and he also uh, wants that Bimla educate herself with the modern ideas and Western education. So that is how Bimla, nurtured by tradition and modernity by Nikhil, and that played a vital role in the nationalist movement also. Okay, so that is from my side. Thank you.